next we have our children's story by Dianne.
Be warm in the corner, huh? And it is if we're bright. We're warm up here, aren't we? Okay. What happened last week? Yes?
One of the persons, but another person was converted. And they told everybody else.
And everybody's telling the good news, isn't it? What's the good news? What day? Saturday is the Sabbath, the Lord's Sabbath. Mr. Bates is so excited, and he went to see Mr. Wheeler, didn't he? Oh, yes, and we just want to tell everybody that anyway, don't we? Like when they say to me, how come you don't work on Saturday? I just repeat the 10 Commandments to them, and they just say, okay. I'm still there 12 years later, you know. But we can't be ashamed of it. We have to tell it, right? And then we also talked about who did they meet that we had in Sabbath school. Anybody remember who else was crossing the bridge? We'd had it in Sabbath school. Mr. Hall, that's right. And he and his wife studied. And now today we have
Mr. Bates
and
Ellen.
Mrs. Bates. Ellen's not in here yet. So that's their husband and wife. And Mr. Bates went home because he's on fire for the Lord, isn't he, to tell him that it's Sabbath. Oh, yes. But he decided, he told his wife that he's going to have to write a pamphlet because he can't go door to door knocking and tell everybody. And we have to get it out like the leaves of autumn. And we do the same thing in our church, right? We get the word out like the leaves of autumn. So he's telling his wife that he's got to write a pamphlet. And she comes in and she says to him, honey, I'm trying to make us some bread, and I don't have any flour left. And I can't finish making bread. You know, they just couldn't run down to Kroger's and get stuff, right? So they had to make everything by hand. He says, well, how much more flour do you need? She says, oh, about 4 pounds. He says, okay, I'll go get it for you. So he left and went to get the flour. He came back, and she wasn't in the kitchen. And then she came and she goes, you only got 4 pounds? He says, that's what you told me we needed. But we always buy our flour in big barrels, like 50-pound big barrel of flours, you know, because they had to make everything. And he goes, but honey, we don't have any money. That's all we had left, and you needed 4, and I had just enough to buy that. What do you mean we're out of money again? I don't know what to do. And he goes, the Lord will provide. You always say the Lord will provide. You always are. And she's crying in her apron, you know. And he goes, he's never let us down yet. I know you sold it, and then it was 1844, and we've spent all that money on literature and gone around telling people about the great disappointment. And now we're telling them about the Sabbath, and we have no food. He goes, you do. You have enough to go make it. The Lord will provide. So she goes off, oh no, you know, what am I going to do? So she went to make her bread. He's sitting there reading, and she goes and makes the bread. She's gone. And pretty soon, he got an impression. We get that sometimes. The Lord puts things in our head, I think. And he says, oh, I better go to the post office. I think I might have something at the post office. We're not going to tear the whole scene down. We'll just do it this way, okay? So he went to the post office. Where did he go? Did he fall? Oh, we almost lost Mr. Bates. Thank you. So he went to the post office. This side's post office, okay? He went to the post office. And he says, by the way, do you have something for me? And the post office guy said, well, yes, I do. I have a letter. And he picked it up, and he said, but there's no postage. You have to pay postage. Back then, you could send a letter that you didn't have to put postage on it and make them pay for it at the other end. And then if they didn't want it, so the person who was sending it didn't have the money to put the stamp on it, it would go. And that's what it said, and I didn't know that before. So it had no postage. He says, postage is due. And he goes, oh, remember, did he have any money? Spent it all on flour. He says, but Mr. Bates, you come in here all the time, so I'll give you this letter, and you can read it. He goes, no, I can't do that. That wouldn't be honest. No. Could I just see the letter for a minute? And he held it in his hand, and he goes, gives it back to the postmaster, and he goes, I'll tell you what. You open that letter. He said, well, you can open it and read it and give it back to me. No. You open the letter, and if you look inside of it and there's money, then you take the postage out. If not, you just seal it up, and I don't want to know anything more about it. This is called faith. So the postman opened the letter, and you know what he found? A $10 bill. And so he took the 3 cents out for postage and gave him the change. God takes care of those who want to witness for him. So then he left and went back down to the grocery store, bought his wife a big barrel of flour, some taters, some probably sugar, not too much sugar though, I'm sure, and some fruit and stuff that he could get now. And he said to them, now you listen, you make sure you deliver this to my house. Now my wife's going to tell you you can't leave it, but you leave it on the front porch anyway. Don't pay attention to her. She's going to argue with you and tell you this, but just don't pay any attention to her. And the guy says, okay, I'll leave it. So he went there, and so when he left the post office then, he went down to the printing shop. And when he went to the printing shop, he still had some money left over, and he's like, okay, I want to prepay. I'm going to be doing some writing, and I want 1,000 copies of this printed off and sent out. And he says, and I'll bring it down when I have it finished. So he paid for that out of the $10. Remember, postage wasn't that much then, okay? So he got all that paid for, and then he went home. And as he was going home, he saw something out on the front porch. What is that? Can you read what that says? Potatoes, flour, and a bag of poppy legumes or something. He just kind of grinned and went on in the house and sat down, and he's back writing again all about the seventh day is Sabbath and giving all the scriptures to prove it. Well, here comes Mrs. Bates back in again, okay? Honey, did you see what's on the porch? I told the guy not to leave it, but he wouldn't listen to me. And I don't know where this came from. And he said, well, yeah, it's there. And she goes, well, it's not ours. He shouldn't have left it. And he gives her the letter. You read this letter. She read the letter thinking that she knew the way the guy wrote the letter, that Jesus told him to send a letter, that he needed some money for some food and to get the publication out. So Mrs. Bates read that, and guess what she started doing again? Bawling in her apron again, but these were tears of joy. And she was so happy. And he said, see, honey, I told you the Lord takes care of us. If we just keep working and trying to get souls to go to heaven, God will always take care of you. It might not be what you want to eat. It might not be the right kind of roof you want over your head. But God's always there for us. So don't forget that when we pray. Answer our prayers. We don't sometimes understand why they don't come out the way we want it, but God's in control of our lives all the time. Now, next week, I had to run to get these off my sister, but the only thing I know about it, it's about a trumpet player. Think about that for a week, okay? Thank you.